don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg. I think the potential of what the internet is going to do to society, both good and bad, is unimaginable. I think we're actually on the cusp of something exhilarating and terrifying.
It's just a tool, though, isn't it?
No, it's not. No, it's an alien life form.
What do you think, I mean, when you think then about it?
Is there life on Mars? Yes, it's just landed here.
But it's simply a different delivery system there. You're arguing about something more profound.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about the actual context, and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico, it's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about.
Hi, my name is Tantek, Çelik, and I'm here to tell you about two hardest problems in computer science: projector hardware, naming things, and off by one errors. I remember 1999, but let's fast forward to the present. Now it's 2019, 20 years later. Some things have not turned out like we expected them to back in 1999. The world's largest social network is actively enabling astroturfing of election campaigns, if not outright manipulation. Yeah, this is just happening recently. Instead of turning the internet into this repository of information and knowledge free for everyone to share, they accelerate and spread misinformation. And worse than that, misinformation that then encourages harassment. It gets worse. Algorithms designed to make you remember a memory with all kinds of assumptions of privilege built into them are being used to auto-generate hateful content, celebrating some of the worst aspects of human society. As Charlie pointed out, the bar has been set pretty low. Don't enable genocide. If those global harms seem a little abstract and distant, I want to bring this to a level a little bit closer, which is there's active harm occurring with the censorship and repression of underprivileged populations. They call it being zucked, or being put in Facebook jail. As if being racist wasn't enough, or encouraging it, they've actively been profiting off of racism as well. Now, as The Guardian points out, this article is 1 year old. I'm hoping that they've actually cracked down on this. But the question I would ask is, have they turned around and taken all that money made from selling advertising to racists and donated it back to the Anti-Defamation League? I don't know. Does anyone? This is not new information. They've admitted to deliberately engineering to exploit human vulnerabilities, to understanding the human psychology, understanding how our brain works. A study by Harvard looked into the different methods by which Facebook interacted with the dopamine response and found that there's 3 different dopamine pathways that Facebook has actually taken advantage of, reinforcing their mechanisms of addiction. They are building software that is smarter than our ability to outthink it or outfeel it. A few years ago, they introduced the algorithm, a method of showing you information that was supposed to be more relevant. Turned out it was more relevant to get you to engage, which I feel is a euphemism for stay addicted. And one of the side effects of this is its increased polarization, amplified rage, and spread conspiracy theories. As if outright polarization and increasing rage wasn't enough, they decided to do emotional experiments without anyone's consent or without disclosure, altering what people saw in their feeds to see if what you saw could make you happier or more sad. They found that it did. To bring this down to a personal level, if all of those harms weren't enough, active use has been found to be personally harmful to individuals. It doesn't make you happy, it makes you more sad, miserable. I really like this picture in particular. It looked like it could be a stock photo shot, but I'm sure you've seen scenes similar to this. People glued to their phones, scrolling away at social media, and perhaps feeling even more disconnected than ever before. None of these people are alone. They're obviously sitting with people, perhaps even with friends, but they're not engaging in real life. They're engaging with their rectangles. I could go on and on, but I'll stop and just refer you to Wikipedia. I looked, and Facebook is the only social network that has a dedicated Wikipedia page just for criticism. And even the Wikipedia editors have decided this is too long of an article. Please consider into sub-articles, and let's see if this works. I'm going to try this fancy new technology called transclusion. It just kind of keeps going and going and going. Yeah. So, as Charlie so eloquently put it, fuck Facebook. But how about something more actionable? Yes. Yep. It feels good. It feels good to express that rage. No, wait a minute. That's what they're doing to us. They're making us angry. They're making us engage in our limbic system and not thinking about it. So I'll take it up one notch and tell you and recommend you stop scrolling Facebook. Everyone say it with me. Stop scrolling Facebook. One more time. Stop scrolling Facebook. This is an excellent start. If you're able to do that, then maybe you could even take the next step. How many times do we pick up our devices reflexively? Stop checking Facebook. Each and every one of us, if you're here, you at least have some certain level of privilege. You have the ability to stop engaging in something. In fact, you have the ability to just pause. How is it that Doro just put it? Let me check my notes. Yeah, I deserve the right to be inefficient. And I'll go even further. I deserve the right to do nothing, nothing at all. Nothing can be uncomfortable. But it's also amazing how productive nothing can be. You might already feel yourself breathing differently from not seeing anything on a screen. Maybe you should go for a walk. This weekend at IndieWeb Camp DÜSSELDORF, one of the participants remarked, "Yeah, I want to do this simple. I don't want to maintain my server because I want to go for a hike in the woods." And I really like that prioritization. So I'll put this up here. Yes, it's a screen we're looking at. But think of it as a reminder. You can stop what you're doing, stop your engagement with the screen, and go for a hike in the woods. Maybe you'll have some thoughts. Maybe you could take a nap in the woods. I've got to try this new technique, nap working. Maybe you'll find some flowers. Maybe you'll stop to smell the flowers. Maybe you'll be inspired to take a picture of the flowers. Great. Save them to look at later. Maybe you'll write down your thoughts, a poem, a song. Maybe after that, you'll feel motivated to share it with a friend. Maybe a few friends. Maybe, well, stop right there. Before we go any further, I want to go back to 1999. And once again, David Bowie, in 1999, he was the first artist, and he launched a complete musical album on his own website, davidbowie.com, 2 weeks before it was available in stores. It's 20 years ago. David Bowie was IndieWeb before we even had a name for it. Okay, let's fast forward back to 2019. Here, beyond Tellerrand, Düsseldorf, 2019. I actually have some good news for you in the present day. Here's all the speakers you've seen. Every single one of these speakers has their own domain. Every single one of these speakers, every single one. And I think all of them, or perhaps almost all of them, have their own website and actively use it to share content. This isn't something that's limited or exclusive to speakers. Everyone that was a speaker at one point wasn't a speaker. Everyone can have their own website. I'm just going to show you a few of these because they are so inspiring and different that it just makes you want to, sit down and start coding something up. And this really is the underlying message here. When you have your own website, you get to choose. You can choose if you just want a one-pager, something really simple, perhaps some contact information, perhaps just links to other profiles elsewhere. I think there was an entire startup created just to do that. You can create a portfolio page. You can reference your work elsewhere. You can create a bunch of static images. You can make it HTML and CSS. This is the bottom line. You get to choose. But you have to start with choosing your identity online. You do have to start with picking a domain name. And in talking with a few people this weekend and here at the conference, I suggest asking around. The people sitting next to you, one of them probably has their own domain name if you don't already. Ask them, where do they host it? Where do they register a domain? Find out. Something that's less than the cost of a phone, much less, or internet service. What can you do with a domain? Well, a lot. And in fact, you can get started once you have a domain for free. How many people here use GitHub in some regard? Okay, that's like 80%, if not more than that. Did you know you can host a free website on GitHub? The IndieWeb community has created a one-page template. I think Carolyn will be proud of us because it's semantic HTML and CSS. And no JavaScript, because you don't actually need JavaScript to be on the web. You can do beautiful things with it, progressive enhancement, but just to start, you can clone this project, follow the instructions from GitHub, and get going. Now, I have a feeling that documentation could probably be improved. I think we know someone that might be able to help them with that. The next step, and each of these steps you can take one at a time when you feel like it, when you've got the time to do it, is to own your content. Many of our speakers are doing that as well. I'll just flip through a few of these because you can see they do look different. I really liked Mike Hill's presentation. It was incredibly inspiring. The stories we tell do matter. The stories we tell about the world around us, the stories we tell about what we can do. I haven't seen a single site that looked the same like any other one of these sites. The diversity of all these sites just blows my mind, and none of them seem to be using that kind of three-column cliche bootstrappy thing. We don't have to do that. You can choose. And all of that was true in 1999. What's different today in 2019 are two things. And the first of those is that you can choose your connections between your website and other websites and the interactions between them. That's new. That's something that the IndieWeb community has figured out, has helped people deploy, has helped build tools to do. So I'm going to show you a few examples of that as well. Of all the home pages, Charlie's is the only one that shows likes. Have you ever seen that before? I think it's kind of amazing. So you can like her page, which makes you wonder, why do you need a Facebook page that can get likes when you can make your own website that can get likes? So how does this work? Well, I'll show you one more example. The blog of this very conference. Here's a blog post. It's got reposts and likes. These are enabled through a couple of minimal building blocks called web mention and microformats 2. These are web standards. Web mention has been standardized at the W3C over 2 years ago and steadily growing. It's got an open test suite. It's got over a dozen interoperable implementations that are able to contact each other. Do you remember pingback? Anyone here remember pingback? A few folks. Web mention is basically the evolution of pingback. What we did with web mention was drop the XML, because it turned out you didn't actually need XML RPC to make web mention work. Instead, we used simple form-based interaction. You can actually build an HTML form that will send a web mention without any coding, any back-end coding at all. In addition, web mention has been taken through all the security review and tightened up. There's extensions to help fight spam and abuse, which is always a problem with pingback. And most interestingly, we added update and delete protocols. So when you send a web mention from one site to another to create an interaction like a like, you can also update it, or you can send a deletion request as well. A complete CRUD protocol, as they say. Microformats 2 is the evolution of semantic HTML. Designed after the natural behavior and patterns that web designers came up with, Microformats 2 codifies and makes that syntax explicit in a parsing specification, which is now implemented in almost a dozen different languages. Again, with a test suite so that you know that the implementations are interoperable. In addition, it's a set of common vocabularies. One of the most used vocabularies which these interactions are using is called H-entry. H-entry is built on the atom entry element semantics, which itself was built on RSS. So all these pieces have been evolving over time. We've been simplifying them, making them more accessible, more easy to create, reducing the number of technologies you need to learn. What is microformats? Simple bits of HTML. That's literally, if you know HTML, you know how to use class names, you know how to use microformats. This abides by one of the basic architectural principles of the web, which is small pieces loosely joined. There are other features you can do on the IndieWeb, and I'll talk about a few of those, that involve other building blocks. The key here is that with each step, you can enable more functionality, and each step by itself is something that's simple and accessible, something that you can complete in an afternoon or a weekend. So I didn't tell Mark I was going to do this, and I know how much he hates attention. So this is Mark's website, And he supports web mentions as well. Here's an interview by the Dorf. There's his likes. Someone I posted on my site. There's one from Carolyn. And one more post from Mark. Mark almost always posts positive things. I really admire that about him. But I can relate to this as well, that I missed something on Medium. How many remember when Medium's design was so beautiful that it made you think, I don't want to maintain my own blog, I just want to blog there. It looks great. Anyone remember when that was true? Yeah. And how many people just abandoned their blogs and decided, I'll just switch to Medium because they've obviously done a great job, the presentation's awesome, the styling is awesome, the UI is awesome, and then this happened, and more. And now, why would you want to write and publish someplace that gives your readers such a horrible user experience? Right? A bit of a UX bait and switch. But that's not why I came to this post. Why I came to this post is it was obviously really popular. And Mark has chosen how he wanted to display the responses, including comments. And you're thinking, well, it's a blog. Blogs have comments. However, if you scroll down to the bottom, lots of comments apparently, there is no comment form. All of these comments are coming in via web mention and being read using microformats. So this is the beauty of the IndieWeb, is that we don't need to have things called web mentions. We have comments already. It just seamlessly works the way that you want a UX to work. So how do you get started with that? You saw the GitHub template page. How do you get started with owning your content? Well, in 2019, there are now 3 very distinct paths to take, depending on how much time you want to spend versus how convenient you want it to be. Micro.blog launched and is an excellent service that launched with support for all these IndieWeb protocols and standards. You literally sign up there. They have beautiful instructions for how to add your domain name to be hosted there. So you can be using micro.blog as your content hosting service, but all your URLs, your domain, your name, all your content belongs to you. The next step is use a CMS. I'm sure there's some folks that use CMSs out there, like WordPress or Drupal, Kirby, Craft, maybe Known. All of those either support these protocols built in or have plugins actively maintained. And lastly, because the IndieWeb is a bit of a hacker, tinker, creator community as well, there's quite a number of us that are making our own CMSs. Why? Maybe it's something that we want to customize. Again, you can choose. You can choose your level of involvement, your level of convenience, level of flexibility. And this is the second of the 2 new things from the IndieWeb, which is the experience side. What did we say earlier? Stop scrolling Facebook. That experience of scrolling Facebook, of constantly looking at social media, is what's bringing us down. And so it's one thing to own your domain, to publish all this content on your domain, that you're now in control of. It feels great. That sense of ownership, that sense of, I don't have to worry if my site's going to get taken down. I don't have to worry if my Twitter's going to get locked. I have some recent experience with that. I can still post on my own site. How did Jeremy put it? He said, well, I could see what you had posted that pissed them off. A bunch of running pictures. Or maybe it was the alt text. But this is the key piece, is to be able to be in control of your experience as well as what you express on the web. Aaron Parecki wrote up a blog post about the evolution of readers. So even though Google killed our reader, a bunch of independent RSS readers sprung up in its place and have had some amount of uptake. But there's a further step that's been taken in the evolution of readers, which he's calling IndieWeb readers, and he has successfully set his up so that he doesn't even have to visit Twitter or Facebook anymore. He does still use the Instagram app just to post, but he doesn't have to visit there. He still has accounts there. And how does he do that? He uses a setup with any one of a number of interoperable social readers. And you might think, well, what's different about these? What's different about these readers than RSS readers is that they allow interaction right there in line with the content you're reading. You're in control of who you follow, so you're in control of who shows up in your feed instead of random suggestions. And the items show up in time order. Brilliant concept. But it's this interactive piece that really makes the difference. Right there in the reader, you can reply, you can repost, you can like, bookmark. And that works with a handful of other IndieWeb building blocks, microsub, micropub, indieauth. All of these readers interoperate. That is, you can be using one to read your content, switch to another. Let's say you like one reader on desktop and one reader on mobile. And they are in sync in terms of the items you've seen before. And that's using this protocol called microsub to synchronize your reading lists, to synchronize who you're following and what you've read with your own server. Just like websites, the diversity of the UXs of these readers is amazing. They have together has different views, for example. One of the views is a map view, where you can see where have your friends checked in, for those of us that still use Swarm. It's got a photos view that's got a beautiful gallery mode. Again, this is all coming from people's own websites. So not only can you choose how you want to publish, you get to choose how you want to read. And that's perhaps the most powerful side of all. Because now you've taken control of what was previously triggering you and reinforcing the addictive behavior, and instead, you've chosen exactly what you want to see and when you want to see it. Yeah, how do you get started with a reader? That blank GitHub site that I pointed you at earlier, that has the minimal pieces you need. You set that up on a static GitHub domain with your own domain name, and you can sign into these social readers and start using them right away. You don't even need to publish content if you just want to change how you read content. Most recently, like 2 days ago, Matthias Ott, who's a brilliant UX designer, wrote this blog post into the personal website verse. And I said, wow, I mean, my job is almost done. I'm going to cut my presentation short because he goes into so many good reasons why you should be on the independent web. I'm not going to scroll the whole thing here, but there is one piece in particular that I want to point to. It's this quoted tweet from Sarah Suidon, and I'm probably saying that wrong, so I apologize, Sarah. But a lot of people ask me, like, why do I need an independent website? Why do I need my own website? Do I deserve my own website? Yes, of course you deserve your own website. If you code, if you tinker, if you design, I think Sarah's appeal is the best. Her favorite part is she gets to use it to experiment with latest and greatest features. And she talks about using it professionally for what she did to learn. Her CSS grid implementation, service workers, CSS variables. I just recently started using those myself, like just 10 days ago. They're awesome. Added theming to my site. All of those on her own site. And there's more. I'm not going to scroll the whole thing. I highly recommend you read his blog post. It's excellent. And where does this bring us? Well, this is his call to action to join the independent web. And that's what I want to tell you to do too as well. Here are 2 easy to remember entry points for you. If you're online and you want to get started, indieweb.org/start. But more importantly, I think that the value of engaging with people in person is not to be underestimated. I met Mark because of IndieWeb Camp. And I would suggest checking out one of the IndieWeb events that happen. In particular, IndieWeb Camp. We just held 2 of them, one in Düsseldorf and one in Berlin. How many here have been to an IndieWeb Camp? Okay, look around you and look at the people holding their hands up. Maybe say hi, introduce yourself, ask them, what did you experience? What was it like? Is this something you would go to again? And I bet you each of them will have a good story to tell you. Here are the upcoming IndieWeb camps, in case any of these cities are near you. Utrecht, coming up this weekend. Portland, Oregon, end of June, we're having our IndieWeb Summit. Oxford is doing one end of September, and Brighton in October. And these events are run like bar camps, which means they're either free to attend or there's a minimal fee just for registration or donation purposes. No one is ever turned away for lack of funds. These aren't professional conferences. These are, as some would say, user-generated or unconferences. The participants make the conference happen and get the most out of it by doing so. So I want to emphasize and remind you the 4 things we talked about. Choose your identity, own your own domain name. Choose your expression and own your content. Start posting on your own site, either rather, instead of, or before you post on social media silos. Choose your connections. Decide what you want to show from other sites on your site. If you want to show likes, great. You want to show reposts, great. You want to show comments, you can choose. You can choose which types of things you show, what kind of interactions. You can choose who they come from. You have all that control. And lastly, choose your experience. Take active control of what you read and consume on the internet. What you read and consume helps shape your own personal story of what the internet's about and what the web is about. Take those 4 steps, and you can take back your web. Thank you.